When we try to picture what absolute inescapable power looked like in the ancient world, we usually visualize these giant marble columns. We see endless legions of soldiers marching in polished armor, emperors, stamping their profiles onto the currency, and just these massive, imposing colosseums.
Right.
It's loud, it is heavy, and fundamentally is just designed to be crushing.
Yeah, it really is. It's the architecture of intimidation.
Right.
Rome was incredibly effective at making sure every single person in the Mediterranean basin knew exactly who was in charge at all times.
Wow, yeah.
They operated this sort of binary system of power. You were either aligned with the empire or you were crushed by it. There was no middle ground.
Right. And because of that brutal efficiency, the Roman Empire essentially held a global monopoly on authority.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you flip to this one specific text, Matthew chapter 14, and suddenly that indestructible marble column starts to crack. But the twist is that it doesn't crack because of a rival army marching on Rome. It begins to crack because of a guy handing out bread in the wilderness.
Which, paradoxically, poses a much more severe threat to the foundational logic of the empire than any armed insurrection ever could.
Yeah, completely. So today our deep dive is venturing into a profoundly fascinating exegetical and biblical theological commentary on Matthew 14. The material we're drawing from is by Marc Bates, and it was published by Rabbit Room Apologetics.
That's a great piece.
It really is. And our mission today is to uncover this massive, simmering tension that is just hiding in plain sight throughout this famous chapter. We are tracing the fundamental clash between the crushing weight of Roman imperial rule on one side and the explosive emerging authority of Jesus on the other. So, okay, let's unpack this, because to really feel the weight of this chapter, we first have to understand the political pressure cooker of the Second Temple period.
We do. And to frame this properly from the very beginning, Bates relies on a framework created by theologian Walter C. Kaiser Jr.
Okay.
It's known as promise plan theology. And this lens is absolutely critical for our deep dive today.
Wait, let's slow down there for a second. Just for a listener who might not be familiar with seminary terminology, what does promise plan theology actually mean in the context of this clash with Rome? Like, what are we talking about here?
Right, yeah. It simply means we cannot look at Jesus in Matthew 14 as someone who is, just parachuting into history to start a brand new, detached, law-free religion.
Oh, like he's not hitting the reset button.
Exactly. He isn't hitting the reset button. Instead, he is hitting the climax button on a story that started centuries earlier. He is bringing the Hebrew scriptures, specifically those ancient promises made to Abraham and David, to their ultimate earth-shaking fulfillment.
I love that.
So when we observe Jesus as authority colliding with Rome's authority, it is far more than just a localized political rebellion. It is a covenantal fulfillment. The Creator is actively stepping back into his creation to reclaim it from human tyrants.
That is huge. But before we can fully appreciate how Jesus wields that authority, we really need a clear picture of what earthly authority looked like at that exact moment in history. Interestingly, Matthew 14 opens not with Jesus, but with Herod Antipas.
Right, the Roman client tetrarch of Galilee.
Right.
He serves as Rome's appointed middleman in the region.
And this appointed middleman is currently terrified. Hearing all these reports of Jesus performing miraculous deeds, and Herod experiences this moment of absolute cognitive terror.
Yeah, he really does.
He genuinely believes Jesus is John the Baptist, somehow resurrected from the dead. So the obvious question that follows is, why is Herod so haunted by the ghost of John? And as the text reveals, it's because Herod had John beheaded.
Yes, and the underlying reason for that execution sets the entire stage for this clash of kingdoms. John was operating strictly within the Hebraic prophetic tradition.
Right.
If you think back to Elijah confronting King Ahab in the Old Testament, you see the blueprint.
Oh yeah, totally.
John publicly rebuked Herod because the tetrarch had divorced his wife and illegally married Herodias, who was his own brother Philip's wife.
Which is a move that is a blatant, direct violation of the Torah. Leviticus 18 and 20 specifically forbid those actions.
Exactly. And this exposes the prophetic grid of the era. According to the Hebrew worldview, civil rulers are held strictly accountable to covenantal righteousness. It makes zero difference if you have the explicit backing of the Roman emperor.
Wow. Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many legions are garrisoned in your province. If you break the Torah, the prophet's duty is to call you out publicly.
That is so bold. I mean, I found the dynamic of Herod's birthday banquet so compelling, especially thinking about how power structures still operate today.
Oh, for sure.
We have this lavish Greco-Roman party for the elites, right? Herodias' daughter dances, and Herod makes a rash public oath to give her whatever she wants. And prompted by her mother, she asks for John's head on a platter.
Yeah.
For anyone paying attention to modern politics or corporate scandals, this feels incredibly familiar.
It really does.
It is the classic scenario of a fragile leader who backs himself into a corner and makes a catastrophic, brutal decision simply to save face and maintain his narrative control in front of his wealthy cronies. But looking deeper at the text, was this just a personal petty grudge by Herod? Like he insulted my new wife, so he has to go? Or was John's execution a calculated political move to crush a threat?
What's fascinating here is that we have historical insight from outside the biblical text that answers this perfectly. The ancient historian Josephus notes that Herod was genuinely terrified of John's immense socio-political influence.
Really?
Yeah, he feared John might incite a mass rebellion among the Jewish populace, who universally recognized him as a true prophet. So while the banquet oath and the social pressure were the immediate triggers for the execution, the underlying motive was entirely political. Herod was eliminating a systemic threat to his power.
So he was protecting his Roman-backed seat, basically no matter the cost in human life.
Precisely. He was bound by imperial honor. And narratively speaking, Bates points out that John's death functions as a typological foreshadowing.
Okay, how so?
Well, as the forerunner to the Messiah, John's unjust suffering at the hands of a corrupt imperial-backed ruler directly anticipates the violent rejection Jesus himself will face. It perfectly illustrates how the empire responds to any competing authority, which is with lethal violence.
Man. So the state-sponsored murder of John the Baptist occurs. His disciples bury him and immediately bring the tragic news to Jesus. And, in a typical historical thriller, this is the exact moment the protagonist rallies the troops.
Right.
He delivers a rousing speech, grabs a weapon, and marches on the Capitol. But Jesus completely subverts that expectation. He doesn't launch a violent uprising.
No, he chooses a much more strategic path. The text uses the Greek word anaturka. He withdraws by boat to a desolate, secluded place, an eremos.
Okay, I want to make sure we don't misinterpret that word, because to a casual observer, withdrawing to a desolate place sounds an awful lot like running away in fear.
I can see that, but it is entirely a prudent retreat. Jesus is deliberately avoiding a premature crisis with the Roman authorities before his appointed time. It has nothing to do with cowardice. It is entirely about divine timing.
That makes sense.
But the plan for solitude doesn't last. Hearing where he went, the crowds follow him on foot from all the surrounding Galilean cities.
Yeah, they literally track him down out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And when Jesus sees this massive crowd, he doesn't tell them to go home or, scold them for blowing his cover. The text says he is moved with this deep, gut-wrenching compassion. And he begins healing their sick. And that leads us right into the famous feeding of the 5,000.
Yeah.
This is the moment. The contrast between Herod's kingdom and Jesus' kingdom practically explodes off the page.
Oh, absolutely. Look at the juxtaposed settings Matthew provides here. Herod throws a lavish banquet in a fortified palace exclusively for the political elites, and it ends in an unjust execution. Jesus throws a banquet out in a desolate wilderness for the marginalized, impoverished masses, and it results in abundant, miraculous life. By doing this, Jesus is stepping directly into the role of the greater Moses. He is fulfilling the prophecies of Ezekiel 34 as the true Davidic shepherd who personally tends to his flock when their earthly leaders have failed them.
The disciples are surveying this massive crowd as evening approaches, and they kind of default to acting like practical middle managers.
Yes.
They advise Jesus to send the people away to the villages so they can participate in the local economy and buy food.
Exactly.
And Jesus responds with, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. And all they can scrape together are 5 loaves and 2 fish.
The how and why of this provision are really crucial to the theology of the chapter. By providing food in the Eremos, the desolate place, Jesus is deliberately rehearsing Yahweh's provision of manna in the wilderness from Exodus 16.
Right, the manna.
He is also escalating a miracle performed by the prophet Elisha, who multiplied 20 barley loaves for 100 men. By eclipsing both, Jesus demonstrates that the Creator Word is personally present, doing what only the Creator has the authority to do.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the specific numbers Bates highlights from the text. Matthew doesn't just casually mention there were some leftovers. He specifies exactly 12 baskets, and he specifies 5,000 men.
Yeah. The Greek word for those baskets is kophanoi. Gathering exactly 12 full baskets is not a detail about avoiding food waste. It symbolizes the Messiah's abundant, overflowing provision specifically for the 12 tribes of Israel. This affirms God's non-supersessionist covenantal commitment.
Okay, meaning God hasn't forgotten or replaced his original promises to the Jewish people.
Precisely. The overflow shows the covenant with ethnic Israel is being honored before the mission eventually expands to the Gentiles. Furthermore, the numbering, 5,000 men, besides women and children, is not an arbitrary headcount.
Right.
It mirrors the Semitic Exodus census language found in Exodus 12 and Numbers 11.
So translating this into a political reality, gathering 5,000 men in the wilderness isn't just running a large soup kitchen. This is like establishing a massive off-grid community or building a shadow government right on the emperor's front lawn.
Oh, completely.
It is a profoundly subversive political act. He is forming a newly gathered eschatological assembly of Israel, leading them into a second Exodus. He is proving to these people that they do not need Caesar's paved roads, Caesar's economy, or Herod's permission to thrive. The true king can sustain his people out of nothing.
Exactly. Herod uses the control of food and banquets to manipulate, trap, and murder.
Right.
Jesus uses food to restore, satisfy, and sustain. He assumes the posture of a Jewish householder, blesses the meager elements, and everyone is fully satisfied.
But completely circumventing the Roman economy on land only solves half the problem, right? Because Rome's power is strictly terrestrial.
Yeah.
What happens when Jesus goes up against a force that Rome cannot even begin to touch, like the raw chaos of nature itself?
The transition in the narrative is so striking here. Immediately following the miraculous feeding, Jesus compels the disciples to get into a boat and cross to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. He dismisses the crowds, and then he ascends a mountain alone to pray.
Solitude on a mountain. Again, very evocative of Moses at Sinai.
Yes. He ascends to the realm of divine presence to intercede for his people. But down below, the disciples are trapped in the boat, being violently battered by the waves because the wind has turned against them.
We really need to pause here and recalibrate how we view this scene. Because if you're a first-century Jewish person, you don't view the sea as a fun spot for a summer vacation.
Not in the slightest. In Second Temple thought, the raging sea, referred to as the Tehom in Hebrew, represents chaotic, unruly cosmic forces.
Wow.
It embodies raw, untamed opposition to God's created, structured order. To the ancient mind, the sea is the abyss. It represents the realm of death.
So these disciples aren't just caught in bad weather. Theologically speaking, they are trapped in the middle of cosmic chaos. And then during the fourth watch of the night, which is roughly between 3:0 and 6:0 a.m., the absolute darkest, coldest, most exhausting hour, Jesus comes walking out to them on the surface of the sea.
This is a staggering theological claim that just cannot be overstated. Bates points out that throughout Hebrew scriptures, treading upon the wild waves of the sea is the exclusive, uncreated prerogative of Yahweh alone.
Just God alone.
Job 9.8 explicitly declares that God alone stretches out the heavens and tramples the waves of the sea. Psalm 77 utilizes the exact same imagery.
Wow. So Jesus is literally trampling the chaos under his feet.
Exactly. And when the terrified disciples assume they are seeing a ghost or a phantom, Jesus speaks to them over the storm. He says, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." But we need to look at the Greek text here. The phrase, "it is I," is written as Eimi.
Which carries massive weight.
It really does. It is the explicit Greek rendering of the sacred divine name, Yahweh, I am M, taken straight from the burning bush in Exodus 3.12 and the prophecies of Isaiah 43. Jesus isn't merely shouting, "Hey guys, it's me, don't panic." He is pulling back the veil on his transcendent deity. He is speaking the divine name over the howling abyss of chaos.
Oh, man. And then classic Peter responds by shouting, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus simply says, "Come." And Peter actually does it. Wait, I need to stop you there. I'm actually a bit confused by this next part.
Okay.
Peter literally steps out of a wooden boat onto hurricane-force waves in the pitch black.
Yeah.
That takes a massive, unbelievable amount of faith. Yet as soon as he starts to sink and Jesus catches him, Jesus critiques him, saying, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?"
Yeah, it seems harsh.
Why is Jesus so hard on him after such a bold move?
To understand the critique, we have to look at the specific word Matthew uses for doubt, which is distazio.
Distazio.
It literally translates to double-mindedness. Jesus is diagnosing the core of Peter's hesitation. Peter is attempting to hold total faith in the Messiah and total fear of the cosmic chaos simultaneously.
Oh, I see.
He is splitting his allegiance. But in the unveiled presence of the great I Am, you cannot have a divided mind. The reality of the Creator leaves no room to fear the creation.
That makes perfect sense. And once they climb back into the boat, the wind instantly ceases, and the disciples react in a way they really never have before. They fall down and worship him, using the term proskunate, and they declare, "Truly, you are the Son of God."
It's a moment of supreme Christological significance. Throughout the rest of Scripture, whenever a human attempts to worship a righteous angel or another human, the worship is vehemently, strictly rejected.
Right.
But Jesus willingly accepts this divine worship. The disciples have connected the dots. The man standing shivering in their boat exercises the very cosmic prerogatives of Yahweh.
So what does this all mean for our mission today? If we bring this back to the tension with Rome, I really want to push on the practical implications for those men in the boat.
Okay.
By day, your entire life is consumed by the Roman Empire. You stress about taxation, you worry about Herod's informants, you avoid the legions of soldiers.
Yeah, it's constant.
But at 3 a.m., in the middle of a screaming storm, when the whole of your boat is snapping apart, earthly politics entirely vanish. I mean, Caesar demanded to be called the son of a god, but Caesar was completely powerless to stop a thunderstorm. So watching a man silence a hurricane just by stepping over the railing must have completely shattered their definition of what true power even is.
It exposes Roman power as superficial and strictly localized. Rome excels at controlling physical bodies through violence and intimidation, but they are utterly powerless against the foundational elements of the cosmos.
Right.
Jesus is demonstrating that legitimate authority isn't about imposing political will through the threat of a sword. It is about absolute sovereignty over the fabric of creation itself. If Jesus is Lord over the Tehom, over the chaotic abyss, then the emperor in Rome is nothing more than a mortal man wearing an elaborate costume.
Wow.
Rome as authority has an expiration date. Jesus' authority is eternal.
From that cosmic display of power on the water, the narrative shifts back to dry land. Jesus brings this uncreated ultimate authority to the shores of Gennesaret. And immediately, that macro-level authority translates into deeply personal, micro-level physical healing for the marginalized citizens there.
Yeah, the local population recognizes him the moment he steps off the boat. Word spreads like wildfire throughout the region, and the people begin carrying everyone who is sick to him. Matthew includes a beautifully specific detail here. The sick beg him to let them merely touch the fringe or the tassel of his outer garment.
The Greek word there is kraspedon, right? Which translates to the Hebrew word tzitzit.
Yes, exactly. According to the covenant laws in Numbers 15 and Deuteronomy 22, the tzitzit were ritual tassels that every Israelite was commanded to wear on the four corners of their garments. They served as a perpetual physical reminder of covenantal holiness and their allegiance to God's law.
So these desperate sick people are literally reaching out to grasp his holiness. I was reading Bates's notes on this next part, and it completely shifted how I view the whole chapter. He introduces this concept called vector inversion.
Yes, it is arguably the most profound theological mechanism operating in Matthew 14. To grasp it, we have to understand standard Levitical purity law.
Okay.
In the normal operation of the world, if you are ritually pure and healthy, and you touch someone who is diseased, bleeding, or dead, what is the result?
The impurity transfers to you. I mean, the healthy person catches the dirt, you become unclean.
Exactly. The vector of transmission always flows from the impure to the pure. Defilement in the ancient world is highly contagious. But in the person of Messiah Jesus, that vector is completely dramatically inverted.
Because he is essentially the living tabernacle of God just walking around in human flesh.
Yes. The divine power, or dynamis, flows outward from him. His uncreated holiness does not contract defilement from the sick people pressing against him. Instead, his holiness is contagious.
It's an infectious purity. I was trying to visualize how this works, and I thought about water filtration.
Oh, interesting.
Imagine a horribly polluted, toxic lake. Normally, if you drop a standard clean water filter into that sludge, the filter is immediately ruined.
Right.
The pollution just overwhelms the clean object. But Jesus acts like a miraculous filter where the second it touches the toxic surface, it doesn't get dirty. Instead, it instantly purifies the entire lake upon contact. The clean overpowers the dirty.
That is a great analogy. If we connect this to the bigger picture of our deep dive, the contrast with the Roman Empire reaches its absolute peak here. Consider how Rome exercised its authority to maintain order. They relied on inflicting violence, causing death, and enforcing rigid social divisions.
Right.
They kept the peace by ensuring the unclean and the undesirable were marginalized, pushed to the edges of society, or simply executed.
Because Rome's power flows out of the tip of a spear. It makes people bleed. It thrives on creating broken bodies.
But Jesus' authority operates on a completely inverted paradigm. His authority restores life. It actively neutralizes impurity. It heals the physical body. Rome's message to the marginalized is, stay away or we will crush you. Jesus' message is, touch my garment and I will restore you.
Wow.
It is a kingdom that consumes brokenness rather than manufacturing it. As Bates eloquently notes, the physical realities of this chapter, the baked barley loaves, the literal saltwater waves, the woven threads of a hem, they prove that God's redemptive plan deeply embraces and restores concrete, bodily creation.
It is a total inversion of how we understand power. I think for anyone listening to this deep dive right now, the folks who are constantly trying to learn and navigate the complexities of our modern world, this ancient text is incredibly relevant.
Oh, without a doubt.
We live in an era completely saturated with conflicting claims of authority.
Wow.
We deal with nonstop information overload, exhausting political power struggles, and leaders constantly demanding our allegiance while telling us who we should fear.
Yeah, it is very easy to feel like we are the disciples trapped in that boat, constantly battered by the waves of macro-level global chaos and the micro-level anxieties of our daily lives.
But Matthew 14 offers a paradigm-shifting alternative. It shows us that true authority isn't held by the loudest voice in the room. It doesn't belong to the leader threatening the most violence or the politician throwing the most lavish banquet to impress their donors.
No, it doesn't.
True authority is characterized by deep compassion. It is proven by miraculous provision in desolate places and the absolute sovereign power to calm the chaos.
Jesus isn't just offering a new set of philosophical ideas for us to ponder. He is inaugurating an entirely new kingdom. It is a kingdom that proves its legitimacy not by conquering neighboring armies, but by feeding the hungry, trampling the storms, and healing the sick. It is a comprehensive reclamation of the world from the ground up.
Which leaves me with a lingering thought for us to chew on as we wrap up. We opened by discussing how the indestructible marble columns of Roman power began to crack because of a man handing out bread in the wilderness. We've seen Jesus' infectious purity conquer the massive macro chaos of the sea and the deeply personal micro chaos of human disease. If his emerging kingdom operates by this inverted vector, where holiness actively consumes impurity upon contact, how might those early Jewish readers have expected this infectious purity to eventually spread into and completely dismantle the political chaos of the Roman Empire itself?